So a couple of general notes before we get started. This is really just true for Smash fan base in general, but anytime somebody puts out a tier list on anything, the first response is always criticism, criticism, criticism. That character shouldn't be that placement. They should be 2.5 placements down. They shouldn't be an A+ tier. They should be at the absolute bottom of S tier. Can't believe you put so-and-so above so-and-so. Something like that, right? Honestly, as far as amiibo tier lists go, amiibo trainers are like really, really bad about doing that. But like most tier lists are 80 to 85% on the nose, right? This one is no exception. I gotta say right off the bat, most of this tier list I really don't have a disagreement with. I'm also not that like specific on the criteria that I'm going to disagree with, because pretty much if something is like at or around the tier that I think it ought to be, it's fine. Doesn't really matter that much. So moving to the bottom tiers, we've got this divided into 3 sections. I said in the worst amiibo in Smash video, probably 3 months ago now, that Jigglypuff was the worst amiibo in Smash. Yeah, no, I'm sticking to that. No, I am. Jigglypuff has really one, maybe 2 things going for him, and that's rollout and rest, right? Rollout is very, very matchup specific. I was on Amiibots just now on a phone call with my dad, and while Dad was talking, there was a match between a Jigglypuff and a Little Mac. It was a rollout Jigglypuff and a Little Mac, and the Jigglypuff won because it's Little Mac, right? Like, that's just how it is, because rollout is just ground domination, right? And Little Mac is the worst thing in Ultimate. And anyway, but it's very, very matchup specific, right? You kind of have to take the opponent by surprise, or they're just stuck to the ground, have no other options. It's really the only time that rollout works. So, you could say rest works as well, and I think I pretty well addressed that in the video. In my opinion, Jigglypuff rest is not as good as people think. Obviously, in Spirits, this is not a Spirits tier list, but in Spirits, and you can find the amiibo tier list in the description, that's a different story. I think Jigglypuff is like C or C+ tier in Spirits. I don't remember what the actual list looked like, but we did get a new Vanilla and Spirits tier list at the same time, so go check both of those out. But no, my ideal D tier would probably be Jigglypuff, absolute bottom. And then maybe, I don't really have strong opinions on Zero Suit Samus and Bayonetta. I consider like Sheik, Zero Suit Samus, and Bayonetta to be like sort of in the same placement, but Sheik is just slightly better than the others because Sheik can actually kill, right? Bayonetta, really all 5 of the bottom, all 5 of the characters in D+ and D tier right now get murdered when their opponent can parry. Just a hard and fast rule. They get murdered when the opponent is good at parrying, okay? Like Bayonetta's smash attacks, which are really her only good move, well, you parry, and then she's open for like 15 minutes for you to attack, like you just, right? And then you can just like light a cigarette, and like beat the Elite Four on Pokemon, and like, update your Twitter page with, oh my god, I can't believe Elon Musk actually bought the thing, right? And then you can counterattack, because like Bayonetta just gets destroyed by parrying. Zero Suit Samus, she actually like really doesn't. She just can't kill at all, like for anything, no matter what. And they're both pretty light characters, and the recovery's pretty linear and all that. And then Sheik is slightly better because like her up smash kills through platforms. Her forward smash can kill bouncing fish off stage. That's a really good one. But it's also kind of difficult to damage build with Sheik, right? The best Sheiks that I've seen use like forward tilt with an up air drag down and then like not landing directly below the opponent. They had actually like moved. They did a lot of that. And that was a pretty good idea. As far as Fox goes, I've always felt kind of bad for Fox. I just never know where to put the guy, Remember amiibo tier lists, especially the USAC one. The reason I and pretty much everyone prefers the USAC amiibo tier list over everything else is because the USAC amiibo tier list is, I don't know what the size of the current tier list committee is because I'm not in it, but it takes the amalgamation of probably 20 or so amiibo trainers. Like, it asks all of them to make individually their own amiibo tier list. And then it, like, statistically, or let's rank it out of 10 or so, I forget the exact data. And then it just amalgamates the data. And anytime there's like a large enough gap between characters, they're like, oh, okay, maybe this is a tier list placement, right? And it's kind of up for judgment. But generally it's a math-based amalgamation of people's opinions, right? So with Fox, you know, I don't think he's been D tier in a long time. This is the lowest I remember seeing him for quite a while. We do have the old tier lists on the website as well. Just scroll down on the tier list page. I don't know, man. Fox has the most kill power out of these 5, I would say. But he also gets mostly crushed by parrying, right? The only exception to that is up air, but that gets air dodged a lot. Not all the time, but a lot. So, I don't know. I don't really see any issues with these 5, because as long as these 5 are like the bottom 5, I don't really give a crap what order they're in, you know. But I do stand Jigglypuff is the worst. C tier is much more interesting. So with C tier, you kind of run into some issues with C tier, because if you compare previous tier lists, you'll notice that a lot of these characters like Rob, Inkling, Pichu, I forgot his name, Game & Watch, Ken, they've all been D+ tier before. I'm sure I'm sure everyone has at some point, except for Toon Link. I don't remember seeing him in D+ tier, but I'm sure all of these have been in D+ tier before, and I don't think that they're going to be in C tier, or at least all of them are going to be in C tier the next go around, frankly. It really seems to me like this is a bit of optimism, which is good. I mean, it's always good to see people like getting more excited for their lower tier amiibo, because it feels like one of the hardest parts about being an amiibo trainer is training your 80th Ken and realizing that, wow, this is kind of futile, because he's always going to have like these 18 problems that he has, you know? And so sort of motivating people to like be interested in amiibo is kind of difficult in that sense. I don't think these placements are permanent, especially Pichu and Game & Watch. People do ask me a lot. This is a bit of a meta knowledge here. People do ask me. So I was reading through my comments, and I had to delete this comment because it was fairly vulgar. But somebody basically said that they suggested that I had a brick thrown on my head when I was a child for putting Rob in C tier or D+ tier, whatever tier list was being shown. This was in the comment section of a YouTube short. And I get comments like that fairly frequently. And as long as it's like funny when it's insulting, I'll leave it up, right? But that one was just overly vulgar. And, you know, if I had feelings, well, they probably still wouldn't be hurt. Anyway, so with Rob, though, most of the characters in C tier, okay, I guess I should have laid the foundation for this first and then explained what I was talking about Rob. Most of the characters in C tier, or really just the low tiers in general, they're middleweight or lighter, and they don't have easily accessible KO power, and they have bad AI, okay? If you have good AI, well, you're probably a mid tier, right? Rob is the exception. Rob's a heavyweight, okay? And he doesn't have phenomenal KO power, but he has KO power. He's got probably more KO power than anyone else in this image, except for Ken, but Ken's AI is just so bad. There's just no getting around it. The reason Rob sucks is because that actually is how bad his AI is. It actually is. So this commenter that I was talking about, after making his claim, his insults, I told him, I was like, no, Rob, first of all, this is an amiibo tier list. Second of all, Rob's that low because he has a bad AI, and we can't figure out any way to make him good, despite years and years of trying. And so this guy repeated some of his insults, and then was like, you guys probably don't even know what you're doing, which is like, okay, sure. And you probably never even trained him to use down tilt. And I was like, okay, hold on. Down tilt is the problem. Like, the problem isn't that we didn't train him to use down tilt. The problem is that he uses down tilt too much. Like, if you're familiar with the Rob AI, okay, the reason Rob is like the sole exception, he's like 2 tiers lower than any other heavyweight in the meta, Okay. The reason Rob is that low is because his AI will like spam down tilt to no end. And there is an end, obviously. I think it's like 4 hits or 5 hits or something like that. But it's still incredibly irritating. The AI is so bad, it can't access its own tools. That's why, right? So if you're training a low tier, expect them to either have an AI with like tools that would be useful against human opponents, but not an amiibo, especially in the case of Peach and Daisy, who have like down tilt to it's like down tilt to float cancel to up air combos. You can teach them that, right? But it's not really useful, you know? So they either have an AI that is really better against fighting humans, and so it would make for a much better raid boss, but just isn't great for fighting other amiibo. That's really what you see out of low, because honestly, they're just all bad. Of course, if I was going to hope for any of these to get bumped up, and you know, it's really debatable whether C+ is a bottom or a mid tier. I don't care what your thoughts are on that. I just happen to have cropped C tier. You can count C+ tier as bottom tier as well. I don't care. But, or low tier, whatever you want to call it. But I do hope that at least Peach and Daisy, and it would really be nice if Toon Link would get bumped up to a little bit. But that's going to take a lot of labbing. And I think they've been C+ tier before. I feel like Peach and Daisy have been B tier, but that's way too high for them. I don't know who on earth would put Peach and Daisy in B tier. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on the low tiers. Moving on to mid. Okay, moving on to mid tier. This is just a photo of Tiananmen Square incident in 1996. This is just to prevent Chinese YouTubers or their equivalent from stealing my content, because now if you show this video, you're going to jail. So, yes, this is actually a problem that I have, is that my work ends up getting stolen a lot. Okay. The bottom, or not the bottom tiers, the mid tiers. The mid tiers. The mid tiers in the amiibo meta are where most of the fluctuation happens. If there's going to be fluctuation, it's going to be this. Because realistically, what's the difference between a C+ and a B tier? Or a B and a B+ tier? It's like, well, I don't know. You know, like it's kind of hard to say, right? And so that's why every tier list, you know, it just whoosh, goes up and down. If you look between the tier lists, you know, like track a character's position through all the tier lists, you can, and not the spirit, just be sure that it's vanilla, 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 right? You can see that there's a lot of fluctuation here and there, right? The mid tiers generally, we'll get to specific character spots in a sec. The mid tiers generally are middle weights, right? This just reaffirms that yes, the amiibo meta is primarily weight and KO power based. You need both of those things, right? Better to be weight and KO power based than to be a waste. But some amiibo are strong exceptions to this, right? You take an amiibo like Meta Knight, like Isabelle. I want to say Joker's a middleweight, so I'm not going to bring him up. Isabelle? I haven't like memorized the weight graph in my head because I don't really like play Smash anymore, except for amiibo. So, you know. But no, you take a character like Meta Knight, right? Meta Knight has a very specific niche. And I actually agree with his B tier placement. Meta Knight is B tier, okay? Meta Knight, when properly trained, asterisk, underline, bolded, italicized, because it's hard as hell to train a good Meta Knight, believe me. I tried once and gave up because, frankly, I'm not that persistent when it comes to amiibo training. But when it comes to Meta Knight, he has aerial domination. I mean, he might be, I'm just speaking off the cuff here, but he might be one of the most aerially dominant characters in the game. That shouldn't come as a surprise to you, right? But when the amiibo takes control of it off stage, like easy top 5 off stage games in the game. I mean, there's really no getting around that, you know? And so he's earned his place in B tier, despite not being middleweight. Probably, I guess you could call him a lightweight, because of that, right? That's amiibo innovation, okay? If you look at the earlier tier list, I'm fairly sure, it depends on what time span, because I'm probably thinking of an earlier time span than the tier list that we have available. Back when there was no official tier list at USAC, there was like just people making their own. Most people generally put Meta Knight in like C tier, right? And then some trainers, they got to work and they put Meta Knight up, right? So if you're looking for innovation in the amiibo meta, not really going to be with the high tiers anymore. It's going to be here, okay? The goal of the mid tiers in the amiibo meta is to create high tiers, right? So here's an example, Pokemon Trainer. Okay, so I did this thing. I guess I might as well just bust it out. So I went to Amiibots, okay? This was about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. I went through and I wrote down the #1 placement of each character, their Amiibots ranking, right? I didn't write down like the top 3 and take the average. I just wrote down the one. So you can have systematic issues with the data that I gathered. That's fine. But the point is, I looked at the best representatives, and this is what I got. It's an Excel spreadsheet. So let me pull this up. Okay, so about 3 weeks ago, I already explained that, didn't I? Yeah, I got the #1 of each data, right? So we're looking at here. And I'll make this Excel file available if anybody wants me to. Just leave a comment asking me, and I'll stick it in the description somehow. But I went, I have in order the best placement of everyone in the meta, right? So, you'll notice that like Bayonetta's at 27, but Fox is only at 24, right? This is relative position. It's also a couple of weeks old. Pokemon Trainer on this. Pokemon Trainer on that's not it. On the new tier list is like B+, right? He's got Shulk and Dr. Mario and Steve and Ryu on his sides, right? And on here, he's 31. Well, if you go to the current Amiibots ranking, Zoom, just out of nowhere, he just like kind of woke up one morning. He was like, you know what? I think I'm going to train a 37-point worth Pokemon Trainer. We're going to see what happens, right? 21 matches later, ta-da! Here it is. Now, granted, I'm number 3, going to bestow upon myself +5 stud points, but still, that's a lot of innovation, right? The goal of PT and the goal of all mid tiers is innovation. So I think the reason I'm saying all this is because A, good job, Zoom. B, opinions on mid tiers should be considered as flexibly as you can consider them, is my point. Because they're the fountain of innovation, right? And you'll notice that, what is that, 36.98? 36.98 puts him between Hero and Mii Gunner. That puts him, and again, this is a couple weeks old, that puts him in 6th place in the entire Amiibo meta. Okay? This is the strongest argument for PT being A tier that I have ever seen ever. It used to be a meme, and there have been a lot of Amiibo memes over the years. But now it's actually like legit, right? And the thing is, this could happen to anyone. This could happen to B+ tier, right? I have a strong hunch that Ryu is eventually going to be A tier worth. I know it's controversial. Every time I say it, people are like, hey, Duck, you don't know anything. You don't know what you're talking about. I first said that, I want to say 2 tier lists ago. I hadn't played Smash in like 3 months. I popped in my Ryu amiibo. He's doing all these combos I've never seen before. And I'm like, what the heck? Ryu got an AI patch, guys. Everybody's like, oh yeah, I suppose he did. Well, that's kind of cool. And I'm like, no, you guys don't understand. This AI patch is serious business, right? Like, this could, I think he was, I want to say he was like C+ tier at the time. Well, now people are realizing, hey, Ryu's at, I'm pointing at my computer if you can't tell. Sorry, for those of you who don't know, I have a throat condition that makes it painful to talk for a long period of time. Rosalina, bottom of C+. Yeah, alright. I'm not happy about it, but okay. Bottom, mid, that's fine, alright. I still feel like optimal Rosalina is B tier. I do. Like, the year is 20XX, and, everyone trains Amiibo all the time, and we're post-scarcity world like Star Trek. Instead of being communists, we run our economy. Did you know Star Trek is a communist utopia? Yeah, now you do. That's why I don't watch Star Trek from communists. But now everyone trains Amiibo, and all we do all day is just train Amiibo, right? In that event, when we have like entire universities dedicated to the Rosalina Amiibo, just the magical wonderland of Amiibo training, okay, Rosalina would be B tier. And I do think she's like, I was talking about this with somebody the other day. Who was I talking about it with? I don't know, because I have a migraine. Luma is like very under labbed. Very, very under labbed. And admittedly, I kind of have some blame in this because so I was the first one to really like try anything serious with Rosalina and make some headway. I took second place in a couple of tournaments that were sort of above her barrel at the time. And I told people, I was like, don't use Luma. Because at the time, everyone was trying to use Luma, right? I was like, don't use Luma, just force him off stage and kill him with forward air, up air, right? And that was the default Rosalina for a while. It's not anymore, but that was sort of the baseline for Rosalina, right? The problem is, Amiibo AI is generally more complex than it looks. And in this case, that's very, very true for Rosalina. So, Rosalina, because holy cow, Luma exists and we haven't really done anything with her. I'm sure somebody somewhere, every time I make a statement like that, somebody will be like, well, Doc, so-and-so experimented on this back in like 2021. And like, yeah, okay, but there's got to be some results from that too. So like, experiment, try something, get some results. Darn it, there's almost definitely stuff there. Somebody told me that she has stuff for Luma built in, right? So that needs to get labbed out and like incorporate Luma, you know? Because Luma has a lot of potential too. That's the thing. Like, Rosalina, okay, so this is one of the reasons why Smash 3DS was like really, really interesting for the Smash series, because the difference is Luma is still controlled by the amiibo. It's a hard and fast rule. Anyone who puts the Belmonts below B is wrong. I'm gonna get so much flack for saying that, but it's true. Okay, here's the thing about the Belmonts. No, obviously, I'm saying this knowing full well that this is an amalgamation of opinions. Some people had him in B, probably. Some people had him in C. Some people had him in C+, right? The thing about the Belmonts, I don't know why people keep forgetting this. They're very matchup dependent, but I've seen the Belmonts at or near their best. And their matchups against heavyweights are just insane, okay? I saw it in 2019. I saw it again earlier this year with Dave K's Belmonts in that one Amiibo tournament that we hosted, right? They're nuts. They're Min Min before Min Min was a thing, okay? With their whip and their Nene. And I see I made that joke in the previous, in the documentary video. That's right. Sorry. But the range and the level of control that they have over a stage is insane, right? And this seems to just be a problem with the perception that people have in the Amiibo meta, is that as soon as a absolutely cracked, killer, bloodthirsty Belmont is not being actively submitted to Amiibo tournaments every day that ends in Y, people just like forget. And they're just like, oh, well, well, I don't see any Belmonts. Guess we'll just kick them back down to C+ tier, maybe even C tier. Hurt, right? And they always do that. I'm like, no. Hold on, guys, because they're still the Belmonts, right? Like, they didn't stop existing, right? It's like object permanence, you know? So, no, Belmonts should be B tier, okay? Speaking of B tier, let's celebrate Samus and Dark Samus in B tier. Heck yeah, do you realize how big of a deal this is? It's actually kind of a big deal. There's been a lot of Samus trainers over the years. Like a ton of Samus trainers over the years. And the hard part about Samus is that she's a heavyweight, but she doesn't really hit like one, if that makes any sense. So you have to like juice all of the KO even harder, you know? So it makes perfect sense to me that it took this long for Samus to be B tier, but now that she's in B tier, she should stay in B tier, okay? I think Volkysor, I'm sure there's other Samus trainers. The only one I know of off the top of my head is Volkysor. Volkysor has done some amazing work. We've featured him on this channel. I'm fairly sure that he was the best Samus on Amiibots for a while. Who's currently the best? Reparo, there's Volkysor right there. What about Dark Samus? I think he only trains Samus, I don't know. Oh yeah, best Dark Samus too, yeah. So Volkysor, definitely the best Samus trainer right now. I don't think there's really any reason to doubt that. Let's actually enlarge that a little bit. But yeah, shout outs to Volkysor. I don't have a hat, or else, I don't know why I reached for my phone. I don't have a hat, or else I'd tip it to you. Your years of hard work have paid off, Chief. What else are we looking at? Oh yeah, notice the tier difference between Martha and Lucina. I explained that in the Echo Fighter video a couple months back as well. That would be a very interesting video for you. One of the weird things, you look at Duck Hunt in C+ tier. I'm not debating Duck Hunt being in C+ tier, but his forward smash attacks are anti-heavyweight, feels like too strong of his long distance multi-hit, right? Very powerful, good for KOing. Duck Hunt's is the same way, just not as many hits, and I think it's actually a little bit more flexible than Mii Gunner's, because like the second shot and the third shot like follow the opponent if the first one connects, I think, something like that. Anyway, Duck Hunt's AI is pretty bad, and he's pretty well carried by his smash attacks, but I do feel like, you know, again, Amiibo Heaven 20XX, Duck Hunt would be maybe top of C tier, possibly bottom of B. Possibly. Someone's going to quote that and be like, Amiibo Doctor's so stupid, he don't know what he's talking about. I'm like, well, two things can be true at the same time. Let's see, Joker in B tier, that's pretty kosher, honestly. Luigi in B tier is I don't remember where he is in other placements. I kind of have a vendetta against Luigi Amiibo because I've never been able to figure him out. It always bothered me that Luigi doesn't have like hardly anything really useful out of his grab. I'm pretty sure he has something. I mean, I'm sure if he had something, we would have known about it by now. I don't have that personal knowledge off the top of my head, right? But I'm sure he's got something to do with his throws. Some sort of combo or something. But it's certainly not as extensive as it ought to be. Okay, so this right here is probably my hardest disagreement with anything on this list. Okay. Mega Man in B tier. So those of you unfamiliar with my history of Mega Man, and bear in mind, I haven't been active in Amiibo training in like 2 years. I mean, I've trained them, right? But like pretty much all of my spare time that would go into Amiibo training goes into content and not actually training, right? So it was summer 2019. Yeah, I think it was. I trained a Mega Man, and all the previous Mega Mans had been pretty bad. They were projectile based. They were trying to get him to play human-like because the trainers thought that would work. I was like, no. So what I did, I trained Proto Man. If you watch some of my older videos, you'll probably see some Proto Man. Ouch. My hands really hurt. Oh, yeah, I was boxing the other day, and I wrapped my hands really well, but my knuckles still hurt. So I'm kind of too strong to be, anyway. So, but the thing about Mega Man, you know, I should finish my story. So I set the bar with Proto Man, and for, I would say, probably 2 years straight, there really were no better Mega Mans than mine. There were ones, some of whom that had different playstyles and were like almost as good, like 95% as good, but none that were better. Now, obviously, I've been surpassed, and I don't mind saying that at all. But I don't think Mega Man, he can be in B tier, but not that close to the top. Like, just scooch him down, you know? Mega Man is an amiibo that's been getting optimized a lot. Like, a lot. And the modern Mega Mans are better than, like, any Mega Man that really came before him. Their matchup spreads are different, don't get me wrong. I think their matchup spreads are a lot worse towards heavyweights, as far as I can tell, but much better towards middle tiers and lower tiers. So it's more specific to the opponents, right? My Proto Man style works a lot better on heavyweights, but nowhere near as well on middle and lower weights that can run circles around Mega Man. So it is a matchup difference. But gonna hard disagree with Mega Man being the top third of B tier. I would say either top of C+ or like bottom of B. At best. best. And I think Mega Man is at his best. I don't see a lot of room for innovation on Mega Man. Although, to be fair, I also don't see a lot of Mega Man on Amiibots, which is kind of annoying. So I'd like to see more Mega Man on Amiibots. Get on it. Okay, and then B+ tier. So B+ tier is the potential tier. Like, it's all just the tier of potential. Oh, you could be a high tier. If only, right? If only. Steve is a great example of that. Top of B+ tier. I would be surprised if Steve ever gets above that. I mean, Steve at his absolute best is A, like bottom of A. I don't think Steve should be top of B+ just yet. I don't think that he's been available for research for a year. He's only been legal in most tournaments since his release. Right? It's only been a couple of months. So, actually, when was it? Like, that was like September, wasn't it? Wow. You really lose track of time when you're in law school, let me tell you. But it's been, I don't know, 8 weeks tops, we'll say. The typical Steve, the default Steve, is like B tier, you know? So to put Steve in, and I'm just using the B tier as a rough approximation. So to put Steve in like B+ tier is kind of like, yeah, I don't know about that. Not saying I disagree with the placement, okay? It's just early. He is going to get there. It's just early, you know? Who else are we looking at? Little Mac and B+ tier. A little bit of interesting history for you. Little Mac, back in the day, this was like before... I want to say it was before the Bowser ban, actually. Little Mac was one of the only amiibo to actually put up a fight against Bowser. But he was like super... I think I covered this, actually, in the documentary. Because I covered so much in that video. Wow. That really is my magnum opus video. But no, Little Mac in B+ tier makes sense. They're all confused because, like, you know, every time I get asked about Mac, I'm like, wow, shouldn't he be really low because he's a bad character? It's like, well, no, he really hits hard. Yeah, but, like, he has no recovery. It's like, that doesn't matter when you're fighting only heavyweights, you know? So, but otherwise, no, I think this is, you know, I don't have strong opinions on pretty much anything else here. Looks good to me. Let's move on to the high tiers. Okay, moving on to the final bongo. I'm going to address the elephant in the room right now. Min Min is currently in U tier. That's not what this section of the video is for. We're going to discuss that at length later, so stick around for that one, because believe me, there's a lot to be said about that. Starting with A tier. Looks fine to me. So the thing about the high tiers, is that the scene, the community, the meta, I don't know what the hell you want to call it, has pretty well decided that, like, we know who is the top 12, right? That's in no particular order. I'm just listing them off. Like, Incineroar, Min Min, K. Rool, Terry, Bowser, Byleth, Mii-Gunner, King Dedede, Ridley, Ness, Link. I guess it's 11, but whatever. That's really... You know, if you look through previous tier lists, there's really no debate over it. Like, we just know those guys are it, right? The question really is, where's everyone else? You know, sometimes the ordering changes. I do think this tier list, especially, well, an S tier, had some... Well, I don't even know what I'm looking at as far as the ordering goes, honestly. What the hell? But otherwise, no. Like, the A tier looks pretty much fine. I'm sure that there's some issues to be had with the ordering here. Little proud to see Snake as high as A tier. I've always been pretty optimistic about Snake. Not that many people have, and so to see him that high is really nice. So go Snake. Otherwise, no. I'm seeing a lot of past B tiers, B+ tiers being put in A. That's nothing new. I'm just, you know, commentating on it. Brawler, Falcon, Mii Sword. I want to say, excuse me, Donkey Kong, but I feel like he's been a high tier for a while now. And Banjo. Banjo's a big one. Banjo being in bottom of A is a much bigger deal, I think, than people give it credit for. And he might have been bottom of A in the last tier list as well, I don't remember. But I know that Hictor has a very, very cracked Banjo. Like, over the moon cracked. I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? He's put in a lot of work with Banjo. Banjo certainly got some shenanigans. Banjo was kind of the one that we wrote off from that update, right? Because we got Terry, Byleth, and Banjo at the same time, right? And obviously Terry and Byleth, well, they've done well for themselves, but Banjo, just brush him off, right? So for Banjo to be doing this well, that's a good thing. Now the pits. The pits are the real tragedies of the meta thus far. The pits used to be much higher than they were. They used to be considered, I think, even A+ tier for a good long while. I could still see them at top of A. I could still see them at top of A. The hard thing about the pits is that they're glass cannons, okay? Their KO power takes some technique to pull off, and technique in Amiibo doesn't really happen, right? So you've got to be a kick-ass top-notch trainer to make it happen. And when the kick-ass top-notch trainers are like making it happen, their makeshift of characters like Byleth have really knocked them down a peg. But we'll revisit the pits. Really, nobody goes from A+ to S unless it's Mii Gunner. I mean, you know, in my opinion, I've said this before, I'll say it again, Mii Gunner is an S tier character. I understand that it's an unorthodox S tier character. She certainly doesn't. I assume Mii Gunner is a woman because the default is a lady. She's unorthodox as far as S tiers go, and there might be more innovation left that needs to happen to make that happen. But she has the moveset of an S tier character. I mean, like, come on, you know, she's got missiles. She can put out 2 missiles at a time. Just keep that going forever, right? She's got the killer forward smash. She's got killer up smash. Great, you know, phenomenal anti-air option. Pretty good recovery, although it's easily edge guardable. It's got good range, but it's easily edge guardable, right? I don't know. It's one of those very small points of meta development that have yet to grow in the high tiers. I do think Link being an A+ is accurate. It's kind of a hot take. I do not think Link is S. Sorry. I've heard some people insist that Link is S. And Link does have, kind of like what I described with Peach and Daisy, where they have like down tilt to float cancel to up air combo, right? Link has some shenanigans like that as well, incidentally starting out of down tilt, but they aren't really helpful. They don't change his matchups in any positive way that I can tell. So Link being bottom of A+, perfectly fine with me. I don't see Link as a character that has that much room left for optimization. Because Nintendo put so much crap into his AI that just isn't helpful, you know? Although I will say, yeah, I did talk about this. In the Amiibo hacking video that like nobody watched because that was the day that YouTube algorithm decided to just flip my channel off and just turn it down. The item collector bite discovery with Link is a big deal. I do think that's a big deal. And it might move him out of bottom of A+, but it might be like second from the bottom of A+. You know what I'm saying? So I don't anticipate that that's going to be major, but that still moves the needle, right? You can't ignore something like that that moves the needle and doesn't seem to have any downsides. As far as King Dedede goes, I could see Dedede someday being S tier. I don't think that we have it. I don't think that the current skill level of the general Amiibo trading population is high enough and focused enough that it would be able to simultaneously maintain the integrity and skill of the current S, A+, and A tier Amiibo population while also elevating King Dedede to the skill level that he needs to be at to compete at the S tier level. In other words, I'm saying get good, because King Dedede could hypothetically be S tier, but otherwise no. It's really just Gunner and Dedede that in 20XX Amiibo land, when everyone trains Amiibo, yada yada yada, Dedede might someday be S tier, but he would be bottom of S tier. And I mean, like, sort of dangling off, right? Otherwise, I mean, Olimar is kind of a funny case because I'm pretty sure he's by far the lightest person on this section of the tier list. But his Pikmin are just nuts. I mean, they're just ridiculous creations that exist for some reason. Yeah, it's really all there is to be said about the high tiers. So stick around because we're going to talk about Min Min and U tier because holy cow. Okay, so now it's tomorrow. At least it's tomorrow for me, yesterday. It'll be yesterday for those of you watching tomorrow. This is the big news right here. So this has never happened before. You might be asking, and this is what people normally ask, Doc, what the hell? What's U tier? Like, because usually tier lists, they'll have like, you know, A, B, C, D, F, right? And they'll have an S tier, right? Every Smash game has an S tier, right? In 64, it's Pikachu. Although I think Kirby is also S. I don't know. Melee, they had like 4 S tiers for a while. I don't know if they ever updated that tier list. That was a silly list. Brawl, you know, you've got, I think it was the Ice Climbers in S tier, and then Meta Knight, SS tier, right? So usually above S tier, you'd have S plus or SS, right? Smash 4 had its thing. It was like Bayonetta and Cloud or something like that. And then there was like a third one, probably Sheik, maybe. Amiibo has U tier. And the reason we have U tier instead of SS tier is because the U stands for unbeatable, right? Those of you familiar with Amiibo will know what I'm about to tell you. Incineroar's Alolan Whip. I have to get this terminology right or else somebody's gonna ping me and be a dick. Well, basically it's unavoidable. I mean, technically Amiibo can see it coming like a few frames before it actually hits them, but that doesn't even matter. It's basically unavoidable. So Incineroar hits you with a Alolan Whip 3 times, you're done, right? So that's why Incineroar is in U tier, because he's unbeatable. Now, there's very specific character matchups sometimes that can give Incineroar a hard time, right? Mii Gunner is the most famous one because Mii Gunner, and I don't know if any others have ever actually arisen, but Mii Gunner was the only one for like, I don't know, 3 years that ever beat Incineroar consistently because she just spam missiles, right? And so you've got Incineroar, who's trying to do a Alolan Whip, and Mii Gunner, who's just beating the hell out of him with missiles. It was gone, right? Now, the hard thing about Incineroar, before we get into Min Min, we do need to talk about Incineroar. The hard thing about Incineroar is that you have to train him like 99.5% perfectly to get that Alolan Whip effect, okay? If he's not pretty much exclusively using Alolan Whip on stage and down smash as a ledge guard, and there's probably another variation at some point, but that's the traditional Incineroar, okay? If he's not exclusively doing that, he's not U tier. He's like, you know, S if he's doing Alolan Whip maybe 98% of the time. Not even that, maybe 95% of the time. And then he's like A plus if he's only doing it like 80% of the time, right? So like Incineroar is, you know, when he's perfectly fully optimized, which is not hard to do, he's just right in an Amiibo tournament and we won't ban Incineroar. That's why it always ends up with 8 Incineroars, or 7 Incineroars sometimes, in top 8, okay? So Incineroar is unbeatable. That's why he's in U tier. The question is, Min Min. Is Min Min at the same level as Incineroar, okay? We saw on the previous tier list that she was listed higher than K. Rool, Terry, Byleth, and Bowser. That's a hell of a list right there. It's also kind of a hard sell, okay? Min Min... How do I put this properly? So Min Min has been optimized for a full year by Amiibo trainers already, right? The data for all the Amiibo is in the game, except for Sora Asterisk, of course, but we already did a video on that, so I'm not going to rehash that. So she's been pretty heavily optimized. And we kind of suspected when the character was first revealed that, holy crap, this Amiibo's got to be terrifying, okay? But it's not clear to me that she's U tier. So I asked several members of my fan base what they thought about Min Min in U tier, and this was how the conversation went. Let me skip it. We're just going to address this in order, okay? So this is Rukasu. It's not Rukasu. No, see, he pronounces his handle Rukasu, but I'm always right, so it's Rukasu. I don't know about Min Min in U tier. She still has losing matchups, unlike Incineroar. It's a good point. Incineroar really has no bad matchups outside of Mii Gunner. If she's U tier, then we should put Kazuya in U tier as well. It's a good point. So we've covered Kazuya as well. He's not really on topic, but we've covered Kazuya as well. And I'm kind of split on putting Kazuya in U tier because he's still technically beatable. There's no problem with that. He doesn't have anything that Shrek's Amiibo AI the way Incineroar does, right? But he is also just that good, you know? So it's difficult to parse that out. The thing is, I would be okay with putting Kazuya in U tier, but not Min Min, right? Personally, Min Min is S tier, not any higher than S tier. She's not A+ tier. She's definitely S tier. She's kind of hard to train as far as an S tier goes, but she is S tier. If you look at the Excel file, that I guess we'll cover that in a sec. We'll cover that in a sec. So Rukasu 1 vote against U tier on the matchups. This is Destruct How. Well, I do think Kazuya is U tier. Hard agree. I really don't think Min Min is. Too many losing matchups. Also, hi, subscribe. Okay, so that's 2 on the matchups. Subscribe to Amiibo Doctor. Hey, that's a good idea. You should subscribe. Man, Dist? I don't know. You just moved up 11 places on my list of 500 favorite people. All right, we'll kill these off so I don't overload my computer. Min Min doesn't, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much expected. Min Min doesn't deserve U tier by a long shot. Well, actually, hold on. I don't know if I would say by a long shot. This kind of becomes a question of what does it mean to be in U tier, all right? Now, the tier labels don't technically exist. They're just letters, right? I always considered U tier to be unbeatable tier because it's only been occupied by Incineroar for the longest time, which would be unbeatable, right? To say not by a long shot, I guess it's really more of a question of win rates. And just in 20XX, the ability to get beaten, right? Min Min is stupid good. Weaknesses and flaws, and Incineroar does not. S tier suit. Yeah, that's fair. This is where it gets interesting. 6B Baby has the first Min Min to break 30. He, currently, at least when I checked a couple days ago, he is still the #1 Min Min trainer in vanilla. Undisputed. Amiibots has the data, okay? And I'm fairly sure... I'm fairly sure that Min Min does have the second highest Amiibot score, which is this one, behind Incineroar, who's at like 42 or 43 points. So there's like a big 4-point gap between Incineroar and Min Min, but then there's not much of a gap between Min Min and like the rest of S tier and most of A+ tier, right? Like you'll recall, you know, we've got, let's say Min Min's at 38.35, and you know, this screenshot was taken probably 2 days ago, so we'll say that that's accurate. That Pokemon Trainer was at 36.98. So if you're telling me that there's a 1.5 difference between Min Min and Pokemon Trainer, but Min Min is U tier and PT is B+, come on. That's a really hard sell. So, first Min Min break 38 Amiibots. Mewtwo destroys her. DDD does a really good job against her. Min Min is an insane counter to Incineroar. I didn't know that. But to K-Rool can be too difficult. And if your Bowser is good enough, she'll lose. Yeah, so that's really interesting. I would imagine that the heavyweights... So, I've not heard of those matchups before, but, you know, 6B Baby is pretty authoritative when it comes to Min Min. For Mewtwo destroying her, I'd have to see that, because Mewtwo is probably, what, C+ tier right now? I'd have to go back and check, but that's kind of a hard sell. Like, why? Is it because... Theory crafting here. If a Mewtwo was gonna beat a Min Min, would it be because he's so airborne that he would just come down over the top with neutral air? Because that I theory crafted the same thing with the pits. We'll talk about the pits, believe me, because this is a bit of a schadenfreude with me. DDD doing a really good job against her. Yeah, probably because, you know, I'm sure up special on stage has something to do with it. That's an AI problem with DDD. But also just because he can tank pretty much most of what she can throw at him for a good while. Here's what I want to focus on. The pits are 35-65 with her. Maybe she hasn't gone against enough good ones, but it's always a close fight. 6B Baby is also the trainer of Illiterate, okay? Now, I am a guy who has a lot on his plate all the time. So if I have like connected your name with an amiibo of its character, okay, and that amiibo is good, that's kind of a big deal, right? Like, because I don't remember people's names that well, let alone their amiibo, right? So, well, let's just say that Illiterate was the sole and far and away best representative of Pit for a good long while, okay? So this is a guy who knows both Min Min and Pit like the back of his hand. He's saying the Pits are 35-65. Now, we talk about this... is that it? No, that's not it. We talk about this later. I clarified what he meant. He flipped around. He was like, no, I mean... Pit goes hard against her, right? Pit is a counter to Min Min. Now, as I said in the comment right there, pretty happy that he said that. Not just because, yeah, Min Min does lose on the matchups, but also because of this. This is AmoebaDoctor.com if you've never been here. Why? So I wrote this in May 24th, if memory serves, and I theorized, hey, I think Pit's going to be a good matchup against Min Min, possibly even a counter, right? My reasoning for that was that, you know, Pits are jumpy, they're still pretty smart, they can actually KO, right? Multi-hits to sort of break through Min Min's defenses, you know, that sort of thing. As what everyone does the second that I say anything at all, I had a couple of people tell me I was full of shit. Doc, you don't know what you're talking about. Doc, you're so dumb. Doc, what I mean, you know, it's usually not that insulting, but generally very, very unfavorable reviews. Here you go. Here it is. What's the rule on this channel? Doc is always right. Except when I'm not. Doc was right. I called it. This is kind of a big deal for the Pits. And it's more of a big deal for the Pits than it is for Min Min, because the Pits really don't see a lot of rep. Just not a lot of representation at all. It's very, very annoying. And the Pits are probably second to Lucas. The Pits are like the most technical train of, I would say, anyone in high tier, really. It's kind of a hard debate because Lucas is fairly technical as well. And I guess DDD is also pretty difficult, but I would say that the Pits are the most technical, because if you're gonna get certain aspects of the Pits correct, like their Meteor Smash or their Spike, I guess we don't have Meteor Smashes since Brawl. Rip. Like their Meteor Smash down air, right? It's very, very precise, and you have to really not screw it up, right? So, you know, if you're gonna see anything that's gonna beat Min Min, it's got to be Pit, I think. No, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. If you're going to see something that's going to beat Min Min, it will be Pit, right? You might not see that much. It might be low tiers like Mewtwo that have counters. But Pit being a big counter for Min Min is a big deal. Because the Pits are actually like competent and capable in the hands of a good trainer. Okay. Where are we at? Number 5? Okay. Moving on to 6. Yeah, Mewtwo does destroy Min Min. I'm a Mewtwo guy. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'll take your word for it, Chief. This is HD. Hope this helped. Oh yeah, he screenshotted a conversation. I don't know if it's a DM or not. I make it a point to like never share what people send me as DMs unless it's absolutely necessary, you know? So I didn't like screenshot the actual conversation, but it's important to know this. If it's a character that's unanimously voted to be S tier, the character is put in U, right? This is not a problem that we've ever had before, because there's never been a character that was unanimously S tier. There would always be at least 1 or 2 knuckleheads who would be like, yeah, I think Bowser's A+ tier, right? Even though they clearly don't. I don't know how on earth you would come to that conclusion, but fine. Bowser an A+. And the only one that we ever, like, unanimously agreed upon was Incineroar, right? So, having Min Min in U tier, it's probably more reasonable and likely that Min Min is in U tier simply because everyone agreed S tier, but nobody actually said she should be in U, right? I think if we were going to put a character in U, it should be, you know, a separate vote. Be like, hey, last time it was unanimous, Min Min is an S. Do we want to put her in U tier, right? So, you know, but that's part of the reason why I don't take this U tier ranking too seriously, because I do think it's a quirk of the voting system. I don't think it's actually a mistake on anyone's part that caused this to happen. Okay, so this is J Money. He actually wrote, let me see if I can find it. He actually, click. There we go, now it's working. He actually wrote this Me Brawler guide that we posted the other day. Min Min is definitely S tier. She maybe even be top of S tier next to Terry. Yeah, I could see that. I don't want to see that. I'd prefer that the DLC amiibo shake up but not dominate the meta, but okay. But I think her placement in U is less about her dominance as an amiibo, more about frustration other trainers may have when facing her. Yes! I think that's fair. I do think that's fair. I think that same argument should also be applied to King K. Rool. Because we saw, I didn't address this, I don't think, but King K. Rool was also placed higher, is the best legal in the game. That's BS. Like, that is... No siree, Bob, that is not a thing. K. Rool is not the best legal in the game. That title still belongs to Terry until we get Kazuya, because then it's Kazuya. There's really no question about it. Similar to the ban Ness argument, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the documentary. Min Min is just an annoying amiibo to face and relatively easy to train. I've never trained a good Min Min. So there's a certain level of vitriol towards her that pushes the Min Min is U tier narrative. Yeah. If there is a Min Min is U tier narrative, I kind of attribute this still to the quirk of the voting system. U tier, so now this is kind of a question of what really does it mean to be in U tier, right? U tier should be reserved for Incineroar alone because Alolan Whip legitimately breaks amiibo AI. Hard agree. Min Min is great, matches up well with Incin, but having a single bad matchup, which she does, should preclude her from U tier in my humble opinion. Hard disagree, because Incineroar has a single bad matchup, and Incineroar is still U tier, right? We got Me Gunner, right? Min Min's matchup against Incineroar doesn't really matter, I don't think, because even let's just say hypothetically that Incineroar's matchup spread is perfect across the board, except for Me Gunner and Min Min. Okay. Is that enough to unban Incineroar? No, of course not. Like, we still banned Brawl Meta Knight, even though Brawl Meta Knight got, I guess he didn't get countered, but he went even against Ice Climbers, and like 55-45 against Pikachu. I guess it depends on if Pikachu's up special glitch was legalized. But anyway, that's not the point. I don't think that would be enough to unban Incineroar, right? So I don't think we should take Min Min's matchup against Incineroar into account when deciding if she's U tier, right? Just take it off the table completely. Not even relevant in the meta, right? Now, if we get, like, I don't know, if we get 2 more characters that counter Incineroar, okay, like, then we could start to sort of work that in. He'd still be S tier, but we could work that in, right? But that's not something that we're going to get, most likely. So, Min Min's great matchup with Incineroar, but having a single bad matchup, she probably has more than one. We've already talked about Mewtwo and Pit and King Dedede. I have a hunch that Min Min is going to be a character with, and this happens with a lot of high tiers, she'll just have like these random low tier bad matchups that just kind of happen out of nowhere, you know? One of my favorite ones, if you guys are familiar with Inkthinks, or the Smash Bracket channel, same guy, he is a Mega Man fan, and he's trained Mega Man Amiibo. Actually, that's how he came to my content. He's a fan of the channel, friend of the channel, I'd say. And he optimized Proto Man, which is just my Proto Man style, but he added Crash Bomber to it, side B, right? Which is a great innovation, I think, because instead of going for the more vertical play style that Proto Man did, it adds some verticality and it messes with the AI, Whenever an amiibo has a projectile coming towards them, they jump, typically. Especially when Crash Bomber's on them, because they're trying to avoid Crash Bomber, right? So what happened is that he put Side B on it. It was just a direct upgrade, frankly. It was an improvement over Proto Man with no real trade-off. And what happened was it improved his matchups against horizontal fighters. Well, horizontal fighters are the biggest influences in the meta. Okay? Verticality is not that important. It's important for some characters, like Mega Man, but most of the time it doesn't matter. Okay? But horizontal fighters does. So it improved his matchups against the horizontal fighters. I could see something like that where a low tier sort of changes their play style to beat more horizontal opponents, and that presents them as at least an even matchup, if not a counter to Midman. Where was I on? Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. There we go. This is Volkisaur. Min ain't U tier. She's S, all I'm going to say. Also, Samus is B. Yes! You go, Volkisaur. Oh, I should probably explain. You'll see a lot of Portsmouth, Iowa usernames here. This is because of Portsmouth, Iowa. Okay, Grandpa Bears. I actually don't remember your trainer handle. I'm sorry, Grandpa Bear Slayer. It's one of the problems when people change their handles so frequently and they change their profile picture. And so, like, I'll be like, oh, hey, how you doing, new guy? And they'll be like, dude, I've known you for like 3 years. I'm like, oh, okay, well, shoot. It's because I'm really only on Discord maybe 10 minutes a day. I mean, I'm just not, so. Better add Captain Falcon to the list of Incineroar counter. Oh, really? Okay, Falcon Kick nullifies the whip. Oh, he's talking about I thought he was talking about Min. Okay. I don't know about Falcon Kick nullifying the whip. Maybe it feels like exclusively Falcon Kick spam. I guess it does outrange the whip, so I can see that. What does you even mean here? Yeah, that's the question. We have to make a checklist of qualities and compare. I don't know about that. Otherwise, just going back and forth. Plenty of amiibo could qualify as you. No. No. No, I heavily disagree. The whole point of U tier is that U tier unbeatable, U tier universally banned, right? Otherwise, they're just S tiers. Because if you can imagine a tournament scenario where that amiibo is legalized, I just spat all over my microphone, where that amiibo is legalized and it isn't far and away the absolute favorite of winning that tournament. If you can imagine a tournament, sorry, I'm trying to remember what I was saying. If you can imagine a tournament tournament where that amiibo is legalized and it's not far and away the most likely tournament contender, and it has its other opponents in S tier, then it shouldn't be U tier, okay? If there's any reasonable chance that that thing is not just gonna run with it and just take everything else away, then it shouldn't be U tier, okay? Because with Incineroar, if you legalize Incineroar in a tournament, Incineroar wins the tournament. That's just how it is, right? Now, Asterisk might be a suboptimal Incineroar. Okay, we're ignoring that possibility because it's pretty easy to train optimal Incineroar. If you legalize Incineroar, okay, Incineroar wins the tournament. If you legalize Bowser, King K. Rool, Terry, Byleth, you don't know which one of those four are going to win. That's why they're all in S tier. They're probably going to beat the A+ tiers. They're definitely going to beat the A tiers. But you don't know which one of those four are going to win, right? If you take out Byleth, you still don't know which one of those three are going to win. If you take out Terry, you still don't know which one of those two are going to win, right? You can have any combination of those two and you're still not entirely sure because they're not insanely, completely 100% broken. Relative to a good chunk of the cast, they're broken, right? Like if you compare, Bowser to a B tier, Bowser's pretty broken, right? But I guess probably not compared to an A tier, which is kind of nice because starting with B+, I guess really starting with A tiers can beat S tiers. Like that is a thing that happens, right? There's rarely more than like a 1 tier jump, or a 1 tier upset, but sometimes it happens. So with Incineroar, no, Incineroar is the lone U tier. I don't see anyone else even getting close to U tier. Here's Kane again. You two should be for instant, only instant. Yeah, he's talking about spirits. Remember, we do have a spirited tier list as well. I don't know the spirits meta that well, and I'm gonna torque some people off, but it's not as interesting as vanilla if you ask me, so I'm not gonna do one on the spirits tier list unless there's a lot of interest in it. So okay, so this is HD again, talking about Min matchups. Cloud goes 55-45 with her on small stages in vanilla. In spirits, 60-40. Cloud with edge guarding, because in I'm assuming in spirits he has like extra jump spirits or something like that. Min has one of the worst mid ranges I've ever seen. Multi-hit sorties should be easy money on her. Yeah, when Pyra and Mythra come out, dude, this is gonna be odd. This is gonna be nuts, actually. If Shulk edge guards, he'd be the ultimate counter. Are you talking about spirits or vanilla? Scratch that. Lingering edge guards, catch the tether, retracting much easier. Oh, he's talking about when Min is recovering. Yeah, okay, he's probably talking about Shulk down smash at ledge when Min is recovering with up special. Okay. How the pits often use Nair, it catches low recoveries. Fair can catch horizontal stuff, Dare can get rid of things, trying to go deep. Min tether, bile tether, snake anything. I love the snake anything, it's funny. So yes, Pit can beat Min, especially since they usually come in at a 45-degree angle if they choose to jump past the arms, but at that point, since they're the only ones in the game that can, they're likely going to get moved up, since in the character counterpicking scenario with Min legal, be dumb not to have a competent Pit on hand. A little surprised I was able to read all that quickly. I don't think I made any mistakes. So, yes. That's largely true. That was actually the same theory craft I mentioned earlier with Mewtwo, because, I mean, functionally, Pit/Dark Pit and Mewtwo have basically the same Nair. You know, just a bunch of crap kind of floating around their body, right? And so if they're coming in at that sort of angle, just jumping over the arms and then coming in, then you've got them, Tiger. Only ones in the game that can, likely getting it moved up. Yeah, so that's the big determinant for whether Pit moves up, is character counterpicking. Most Amiibo tournaments don't do character counterpicking. So Amiibo tournaments back in the day started with, actually I think I have one right here. Where did I put it? No, those are power tags. Oh, hold on, give me just a second. Where's my power saves? So they started, let me just throw on all this crap, because it got tangled up in my Amiibo box. With an Amiibo Power Saves. What Amiibo Power Saves is, this is how most of the like actual hardcore competitive tournaments run. Basically, you plug this into your computer, you set this power tag on the thing, right? The Power Saves, I don't know, portal, the box, whatever the hell you want to call it, writes an Amiibo bin file to this tag, and then you put this on your Switch like it's an actual Amiibo, and it works exactly the same as an actual Amiibo, okay? That's how Amiibo tournaments run. The problem is, the way that they worked is that people would send their Amiibo file, the Amiibo bin file it's called, to the tournament host ahead of time, and then the host would download them all, put them in his folder, and then run the tournament from there, right? So let's go ahead and drop that a third time. What do you say? So there was no character counterpicking traditionally. I've suggested alternatives to this. Those alternatives haven't taken off because, like I said, as soon as I say something, everyone thinks it's dumb, but I end up right every time. Except when I'm not. And, but in arenas, you actually do see character counterpicking because you have the option between matches to stop, scan in a different Amiibo, and then put that one up, right? That's one of the big differences between the Japanese meta and the American meta, actually. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the documentary. But yeah, no, so it really depends on the popularity of character counterpicking, I think. I mean, we've got two people now who are like, yeah, I'm going to assume that most people would be aware that Pit counterpicks Min. But if counterpicking isn't a thing, doesn't matter, right? So that's the thing that Pit really needs to sort of hinge on. But just generally, we need more Pit representation anyway, because Pit is an Amiibo that is sort of a wild card when it comes to the higher levels, because he's just so unlike all the other high tiers. Okay, last one. Oh, yeah, we already read this one. Okay, cool. Yeah, so those are those are my thoughts on Min Min. Min Min does not deserve S tier. I don't know of anyone who actually thinks that she deserves S tier. It's just a quirk of the voting system, as far as I can tell. But hey, that's life, right? This isn't going to stick around for the next tier list, I don't think. Hopefully King K. Rool being at the top of S also doesn't stick around for the next tier list, because why? Like, come on, people, seriously. But that's just how it crumbles, right? So, you know, kick Min Min back down. I guess my question really then is, where should Min Min be? You can say that she's best legal in the game, and I wouldn't blame you for saying that, okay? I don't think she would be bottom of S by any stretch, but I also don't know how she would fare on different kinds of stages. Amiibo tournaments run pretty much exclusively with Final Destination and Battlefield, even though there are other pretty viable stage lists. I have a stage list on my website that I recommend for people. It's a pretty solid stage list I've found. But still, most places do Battlefield and Omega just alternating, right? Min Min obviously crushes on Omega stages. There's really no reason that she wouldn't. But on Battlefield, it's much easier to get over the arms, because you got platforms, right? Min Min has to jump. Jumping is strenuous, hurts her calves. So, you know, that's a bit more difficult. So the question is Min Min a good enough reason to diversify the stage list? Frankly, like, if you were going to diversify a stage list, at least include, like, Small Battlefield or Smashville, you know? Or hell, Dreamland 64. Well, no, Dreamland 64 probably wouldn't be that good. But anyway, yeah, I don't know, man. I think the only scenario in which I could see Min Min being U tier is if we redefined what it means to be U tier, I guess. So, but no, I guess I think the stage list really changes a lot of whether or not Min Min is top of S tier or mid. You know, it's a hard sell for her to be better than, like, Terry, because he's Terry. Like, if you've never seen, you know, a top level Terry amiibo, you need to go see a top level Terry amiibo. You know, there is a valid argument that she might be the best legal in the game. Her Amiibots record certainly indicates that. You know, when Min Min was, this is actually funny. So when Min Min was introduced and legalized into Amiibots, so many people submitted their Min Mins that it actually caused everyone's ratings to inflate, which was really funny because, and this just happens whenever you introduce a new amiibo into Amiibots. You know, your first couple of matches, it'll fight opponents that are, like, much higher than it, so the system can kind of figure out roughly what rating it should give your amiibo. And so you'll see, like, you know, if you introduce an amiibo and it gets a match, it'll go up against, like, a 12 point something, and your amiibo will gain, like, 5 points, and they will lose, like, a half point, right? So that introduces 4.5 points into the overall pool of the rating system. Well, so many people were introducing Min Min that it caused more and more inflation, because Min Min was also winning everything as well because she was really good, right? So that was kind of an interesting time in Amiibots. So anyway, that's the Amiibo tier list. Let's look at the whole... Actually, yeah, let's look at the whole thing one last time. This is the Amiibo tier list. You can find the official Amiibo tier list at amiibodoctor.com/tier list. Tell your friends, tell your mom, send it to your best friend. I don't know. But this is what it's looking like for right now. Of course, we also have commentaries on some of it, like on Ryu and stuff. Here's the Spirits tier list if that interests you. Don't know why it would. People get really mad at me for taking a crap on the Spirits meta, but come on. So, anyway. Yeah, that's the November 2022 Amiibo tier list. So thank you for watching. Something, subscribe, leave a like, comment things. I don't know. You know what to do. Come on. Do things. Darn it. All right. I'll see you around.